They didn't ring the bell, they didn't call a press conference, but make no mistake, Ripple just filed to become a U.S. bank, and almost no one noticed. Because this isn't just a license application. It's the opening shot in a quiet takeover of the American payment system, one that positions Ripple not just as a crypto company, but as a fully chartered financial institution embedded in the heart of the banking sector. Let's unpack what just happened and why it matters. In July 2025, Ripple Labs applied for a national bank charter through the Office of the Comptroller and the Currency. If approved, this would allow Ripple to operate as a federally regulated bank, bypassing state-by-state money transmission laws, integrating directly with the Federal Reserve, and holding customer deposits under federal oversight. This is the most aggressive regulatory move Ripple has ever made. And it's no coincidence that it comes on the heels of their victory over the SEC, the growing institutional interest in XRP, and rising demand for instant settlement infrastructure. But this isn't just about legitimacy. It's about infrastructure control. Because if Ripple becomes a bank, even a limited-purpose one, it gains access to systems that most crypto companies are locked out of: Fedwire, SWIFT, ACH, and even future digital dollar settlement rails. In effect, Ripple would be able to serve as a bridge, not just between banks, but as a bank, using XRP to settle fiat in real time with full compliance and regulatory clarity. This has enormous implications for the U.S. payment system. Let's break it down. Right now, the U.S. banking sector runs on outdated batch-based systems. Domestic wires settle in hours, international wires settle in days. The infrastructure is slow, expensive, and heavily fragmented. Ripple's core product, RippleNet, is designed to fix that. And XRP, its native asset, is already being used in pilot programs across South America, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia to settle transactions in seconds at near zero cost. But without a U.S. banking license, Ripple has always operated from the outside, partnering with banks but never becoming one. Now that changes. If the charter is approved, Ripple can embed XRP directly into the plumbing of U.S. finance. It can clear payments, custody assets, and settle across borders without relying on correspondent banking relationships. And here's the kicker. Ripple wouldn't need to convince other banks to adopt XRP. It could route payments to itself, serving as a compliant intermediary with native digital settlement built in. That's not speculation. That's exactly what Coinbase did with its state-chartered trust. And it's what Kraken did when it became a Wyoming-chartered bank. But Ripple's play is bigger. They're not aiming for a workaround. They're aiming for full national integration. And the timing couldn't be more strategic. Right now, the Federal Reserve is ramping up FedNow, its real-time payment service. The Treasury is exploring digital dollar architecture, and dozens of countries are launching CBDC pilots. In that environment, a federally chartered Ripple bank could offer a ready-made blockchain-native settlement solution, already tested, already scalable, and already compliant. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Ripple has quietly acquired a stake in several regulated entities, including Medico, a Swiss digital asset custody platform, and has signaled intent to provide enterprise-grade financial services. That means if Ripple gets this charter, it won't just serve crypto firms. It could custody CBDCs. It could move tokenized treasuries. It could clear stablecoin flows between institutions, all with a regulatory green light. And it would all run on XRP. Let's pause for a stat that shows how real this shift is. As of Q2 2025, RippleNet handles over $1.3 billion in cross-border volume weekly. XRP's on-chain volume has surged over 60% since March, and more than 40 banks are currently testing XRP-enabled corridors. This isn't a dream. It's already happening. But most investors haven't connected the dots, because Ripple's charter application wasn't announced in a press release. It was discovered in a quiet filing with the OCC, buried in legal language and skipped over by the media. And that's exactly how systemic infrastructure shifts begin. Not with hype, but with paperwork. So what happens if the license is approved? Ripple becomes the first crypto-native company to gain federal banking privileges and to integrate a public blockchain asset, XRP, into the core settlement layer of the U.S. financial system. That would mark the official crossover point from crypto as disruption to crypto as infrastructure. But there's another layer. Because once Ripple is a bank, it can also participate in monetary programs, from holding reserves to issuing credit to interfacing with government payment rails. That means the same company that built XRP, a decentralized public digital asset, would now sit side by side with legacy banks, with the power to reshape the speed, cost, and transparency of global finance. And if you think that's accidental, think again. This has been the plan from the beginning. While most crypto companies were chasing hype cycles and meme coins, Ripple was building relationships with regulators, compliance teams, and central banks. They weren't chasing users. They were chasing infrastructure access. And now they're about to get it. Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple's CEO, said it best in a recent statement. We've always believed regulatory clarity is the foundation of long-term adoption. This is about more than compliance, it's about building the infrastructure of the future. Here's the final signal. If Ripple is approved, every major bank that ignored crypto will have to reckon with it, not as a competitor, but as a peer, because the next financial system won't be built with slogans. It'll be built with settlement. And XRP is the first digital asset to be wired in. The U.S. is running record deficits. Treasury auctions are straining. Trust in fiat infrastructure is eroding, and the appetite for real-time, transparent, interoperable systems is skyrocketing. Ripple isn't just riding that wave, it's trying to anchor it. That's why this charter isn't just a milestone, it's a warning shot. Because if Ripple succeeds, the entire architecture of U.S. finance begins to tilt toward blockchain settlement. And once the first domino falls, others will follow. Visa, MasterCard, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo. These aren't slow-moving giants anymore. They're actively testing blockchain rails behind the scenes, but they don't have the regulatory leverage Ripple is about to secure. That's what makes this moment so pivotal. It's not just the technology, it's who's allowed to use it at scale with full government approval. That's where Ripple now stands. And if this charter goes through, XRP won't just be part of the future financial system. It'll be baked into its foundation, moving money beneath the surface while the world keeps swiping cards and pressing send. You won't see a rebrand. You won't hear a new announcement. It'll just happen. The rails will shift, the flows will change, and Ripple will be right there, silently moving trillions. And that's where this move changes everything. Because in the current structure, most crypto companies live at the edges of regulation, sandwiched between innovation and enforcement. But a federally chartered Ripple Bank flips that script. It places a crypto-native entity at the center of regulated finance, not as a guest, but as a peer. That opens the door to something far bigger than settlement. It opens access to systems of control, to participation in global liquidity programs, to direct interface with central banks, to the shaping of future financial rails from the inside. It's not just about faster payments. It's about who owns the switch. And Ripple's hand is now reaching for it. If you're ready to see through the noise and track the real power shifts in finance, subscribe now. Because this is the beginning of something far bigger than crypto.